Welcome to a new episode of the Fit Women's Weekly podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the show. I hope that you find something in this episode that makes you want to go back and listen to previous episodes, because y'all, there are over 600. Or even better, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes. Now, if you guys haven't heard the news, I am officially in my 40s. In April, I turned 41. I've had a lot of people ask me questions along the lines of my fitness. How much longer am I going to be pushing my body in this way? What are the biggest differences between training in my 30s versus training in my 40s? And because I've gotten that question multiple times, I thought that it would be a really nice episode for one, me to kind of put my thoughts out there, but also if you have wondered that, maybe you're approaching your 40s and you want to know what's going to happen, or maybe you are with me in the 40 club and you can relate, I thought that it would be a really nice thing to have it here as part of our podcast space that I could drive people to next time I get this question. What are the differences that I've realized between working out in my 30s versus working out in my 40s. Now, the one thing that I do want to stress here is that I've been working out consistently since I was 20. So it's not as if I started my fitness journey or I was a beginner in my 30s. I was well into my fitness at that point and worked out consistently for that decade. And I'm anticipating I'm going to be working out consistently throughout my 40s, but with a few little changes. Now, have I noticed anything huge already when it comes to my workouts? Yes and no, okay? And we're going to talk about this from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, and then from the physical standpoint, I want to also talk about biology and what are the things that are naturally happening as we get older. Because one thing that I will go ahead and say is that women in their 30s, that is when we are at our prime fitness. Our bones become strongest around 35. We've kind of gotten past the 20s where it was all about like, what do I look? And you do get that itch, at least I did, to be as physically fit as humanly possible, whether that was with my strength or with my speed and my running. I thought that in my 30s, I was like, this is the time for me to be the ultimate athlete. Now, does that mean now I've just kind of given that up? Absolutely not. But I do think that that's a really important thing to focus on, is that our body's ability to be the best we could be is oftentimes at our late 20s or in our 30s, and then things kind of start to change after that. One thing that I have personally noticed is my mindset. Again, in my 30s, I was like, I am still able to crush this. I can go out and do all the things. I can, go do interval sprint work in the morning and then come back and do an insane Metcon in the afternoon, and it's not going to affect me too much. My body's going to be able to recover quickly. What I've noticed is that now I am also able to listen to my body better. And I use that quote all the time. Since I've owned a studio, I've always said, listen to your body, listen to your body. In my 30s, I could listen to my body. I knew what I should and shouldn't do. Just because I listened to my body didn't mean that I was actually taking action and doing the things that I knew my body wanted me to do. Now in my 40s, I'm finding myself a lot more responsive to those requirements. So I'm giving myself more grace now so I can listen to my body and say, okay, this is what my body is telling me right now, and I'm actually doing those things. And for me personally, that means cutting back a little bit on the intensity. I've noticed over the past year, even without me making that conscious decision, I'm just doing it a little bit more naturally. I can tell that on the weekends, if I'm not feeling up for a crazy workout, I used to work out, y'all. So Saturday mornings have always been a long run for me, and that still is the case. But throughout my 30s, I would work out with a group of women for an intense workout right after my run. I would finish a 10-mile run, rest for about 30 minutes, and then my group of girlfriends would meet up with me and we would do an intense stadium workout, and it was fabulous. I loved that time. But because one, my job is fitness, so Monday through Friday, I'm working in the Fit Women's Weekly live studio. And then I'm also keeping my Saturday run. That is important to me mentally and physically. I have realized that my body just can't handle that Saturday. And I tried to push through a lot. I've decided to back off of that. And now what we've done, and again, it wasn't even like that conscious decision. It was my girlfriends and I met up one day and said, you know what, I'm just not feeling it. Why don't we go for a walk? And now we've been doing that for over a month. And it is the highlight of my week. So listening to your body and giving it grace, that's actually doing more for me, filling up more of my cup than trying to do insane stadiums and doing insane track work could ever do. Because what I've learned now, and I feel like if you're in your 40s, you can probably relate, the relationships that you have around you are so much more important. And so instead of just working out with my girlfriends where we don't really get to have that like one-on-one time together, it's just us crushing our souls, giving each other a high five and going our separate ways. Now we are meeting on a beautiful Saturday morning. I live in Charleston, which is one of the most gorgeous cities. We grab a coffee and we just go walking. And so we are still moving our bodies, but we're actually able to talk with one another and have meaningful relationships with one another. And I've let that part of my friendship, and we live in a time where we're in a loneliness epidemic, and I work by myself, like right now, by myself every day of the week, except for the weekends when my husband is home. And so even though I was around girlfriends, I wasn't having those meaningful relationships. And now I get to fill my cup with that. And that is doing more for me physically and mentally than any track workout ever could. So that's one of the huge differences that I've noticed now in my 40s. I'm okay bringing back the intensity and doing things that are just as healthy for me, just in different ways. I hope my girlfriends feel the same way. But like we've talked religion and business and family and personal experiences that we're going through that we weren't able to get into those kind of conversations when we're just going for an hour to see how high we can get our heart rate up or how many burpees that we could get through. So that's probably been my biggest thing, is actually listening to my body and then taking what it's telling me and doing what it needs to do. So that's with me personally, but there are some other things that I'm focusing on. We keep hearing things of, here's what you should be doing as a woman in your 40s. This is what you need to do. Well, what's true and what's actually not? So let's kind of take this idea, 20s and 30s, peak fitness. We are able to push our bodies to the grind and then just hope we stay healthy, that we can maintain our fitness moving forward. But here are the things that happen to your body as we do start to get a little bit older. We're starting to get a little bit towards that menopause state. We are in perimenopause. One thing that happens after 30 or after 40 is that our estrogen levels start to decrease. That is a form of estrogen, and that is also the one that is most related to our bone health. So after 35, our bone health naturally starts to decline and our bone density goes down. So that means that if we haven't been prioritizing strength training, this is the time that we need to really be bringing it into our life. And I don't mean prioritizing it over other types of fitness. And I think that's one of the biggest elements that people are getting wrong in the fitness world today, saying you need to prioritize strength training once you turn 40. It needs to be a priority, but so does cardio health. And we'll get there in just a second. However, let's get back to this bone health for a second. After the age of 35, our bone health starts to naturally decline. The best thing that you can do is two different things. Putting external load onto your body, because that impact onto your bones is what causes them to go, oh, I got to stay strong, and causes them to build up and increase your bone density. You can get stronger bones after the age of 40. We are not all destined to have osteopenia and lead to osteoporosis. So start focusing on that right now. Another thing that you can do to help with your bone density is called plyometric exercises. Plyometric exercises is just a fancy way of saying jumping exercises. So lunge jumps, squat jumps, things like box jumps. So that's a very dangerous move. If you're not comfortable doing it, don't do it. But you can start small. Jump rope is a plyometric exercise. That pounding and that bouncing up and down, again, helps with our bones to go, ooh, I got to build myself up so that I become strong. So plyometric exercises is a very powerful thing. Not only for our bone health, just a side note, but plyo exercises helps our brain and our body connect so that you become just a healthier individual that can lead a more independent life, so you're less likely to fall. You have better proprioception, which just means a better understanding of where your body is in space. So first part of getting older is our bone density goes down because of that decrease in estrogen. The next thing that's also going to go down is after the age of, and I have the specific, where did I write this down? After the age of around 30, of course it's all different for each person depending on where your fitness life is, but bone mass also starts to decrease, and it decreases very quickly. We're talking about 3 to 8% per year. Now, the science also shows that that's not just because of hormonal changes or just because we're getting older. For a lot of us, as we get older, we use that as an excuse to start slowing down. We start saying, I'm now 40 years old, I can't pick up the weights that I used to be able to. And when you're not prioritizing that strength training, or you're changing your fitness from one type to another, maybe in your 40s, you're like, I can't lift any weights, so I'm gonna go to a bike instead and just prioritize my cardio. That's gonna obviously decrease our muscle mass at a more rapid pace, because that is not built to help us increase our muscle mass. That's there for just your cardio fitness. So make sure that no matter where you are in your fitness journey, that your strength training is a priority to help limit that decrease. And then also we want to try to fight it as much as possible, because no matter what, it is your body's natural tendency to decrease muscle mass with age. So make sure that you're getting in those 2 to 4 strength training programs per year. And it is possible to get stronger. Y'all, in my 40s, I'm still hitting PRs. I hit, I think, 2 strength PRs last year with pull-ups and deadlifts, and maybe chest press as well. I don't remember, but I'm thinking I hit quite a few pretty cool PRs. So just because you're getting older doesn't mean that you have to slow down, which is why a lot of doctors say that women, when they get older, should start prioritizing more heavy lifting, where you're staying in that 4 to 6 rep range when you're lifting weights. That I do not necessarily agree with. If you have a strong background in strength training, then yes, it is fine to go into a period of training where you are lifting that heavy. But I think that's also important to focus, and I've talked about this recently, that there are different types of strength training. You have those different, you have like the 4 to 6 rep range, you have the 8 to 12 rep range for hypertrophy, you have like the 13 and plus for endurance, and you should be playing around in all of those different intervals of strength and of your rep ranges. Now, what I also want to stress is that, I say like, oh, this is your endurance area. That myth has been busted, where as long as you are progressing with how you are pushing your body, it doesn't matter what rep range you're in, your body is still able to build strength and build muscle mass. So if you stay in a period where you're lifting 15 reps for every set, as long as you're changing the weight that you're using, you're making it harder on yourself, you can still get some amazing gains. So that is the biggest thing, is not necessarily how much weight you're using, but what is the level of intensity that you're pushing your body. Progressive overload is the key here. And so yes, staying in that 4 to 6 heavy rep range is going to put more load onto your bones to help with that bone density that we talked about. But that is also a very dangerous rep range for a lot of people. If you have no experience lifting, or you've never lifted that heavy before, and all of a sudden you pick up a weight that's so heavy you can only do 4 reps, you're most likely going to end up hurting yourself. Your form's going to give, something's going to happen. So make sure that you have that background, or that you are training with someone to build up the confidence that you know that your form is good before you try. And then stay in each section. You can go through periods of about 8 to 12 weeks where you're kind of more in the endurance zone, more in that hypertrophy range, and then more in that power/strength range. It's fine to play around. It's fine to mix match. Just make sure that you're finding a trainer that's going to help guide you, which, if that is something that you're on the lookout for, my next session of the Ignite 30 program is open. It is a 30-day program to help get you started, to help build a consistent routine with your strength training and with your cardiovascular health. You're going to get one-on-one coaching from me. You're going to get micro coaching tips throughout the week and challenges throughout the week for 30 days. This is a very intimate, personalized coaching program. Spots are very, very limited. I will put the link down below if you're interested, but we're just a few weeks from getting started on that. I don't know how many more Ignite sessions I'm going to do. So if you're like, yes, I need help with everything that you're talking about, go join me for the next Ignite 30 session and join an amazing group of women that are going through it with you, that'll help hold you accountable and make you successful. Now, that's going to take me to the next thing. We're talking about strength. And this is what breaks my heart, because I feel like all the fitness pros out there are saying, when you turn 40, you got to prioritize your strength, which you do. But that, again, doesn't mean you're deprioritizing, is that a word? Other types of fitness. In my 30s and maybe into the 20s as well, cardio was my thing. Actually, I know for sure in my 20s. It was all about how many calories could I burn in a certain workout. Now that strength should be a huge priority, does that mean that you need to take your foot off of the pedal and not focus so much on cardio? No, absolutely not. Your cardio workouts are what's going to help you with your heart health, with your lung health, with your mental health, with your anxiety. If you are an overthinker like me and have issues with anxiety, my cardio is what helps keep me sane, but it also helps keep me healthy. We all know that cardiovascular health is one of the major issues for disease and for death here in our country. So it's not something that we just give up on. You should not be focusing on cardio or strength. You need to be prioritizing both of them. And that means getting about 2 to 3 sessions per week of your cardio in. Let's see. And then the last part of what's the difference between training in your 20s and your 30s? Flexibility and mobility. This one I cannot stress enough because I was there. Trust me. In my 20s and 30s, I was like, I don't need to warm up. I don't need to cool down. I can go from one thing straight on. I can go from my workout straight into living life without thinking about it. I don't need to stretch. I've always been a flexible person. We live in a time where we sit down a lot and our posture is not always great. We experience tight hip flexors from sitting down, a lot of low back pain, and it's also just part of aging, y'all. I hate to tell it to you. I really, really am. But women lose flexibility at an average of about 0.6% a year, with the sharpest decline coming after, you guessed it, 40. So a lot of things that I said recommended stretching for about 15 to 20 minutes per day. I don't have time for that, especially when I'm already telling you we need to prioritize our strength training and our cardio, right? Because that takes time out of our day. And then we have to add 20 to more minutes just to stretch. No, but I am an advocate for getting at least 5 minutes of stretching in per day. Pick just 2 or 3 of your favorite stretches. Do them for 60 seconds before you go to bed. Do them 60 seconds when you wake up in the morning. And then every couple of days, change up what stretches you do to make sure that you're focused on hamstrings, quad, lower back, even your core, shoulders especially, and your pecs. I think that a lot of times we neglect our upper body because when we think about stretching, we think about downward dog, we think about just touching our toes in a forward bend or doing the butterfly stretch or the pigeon pose. But if we are sitting at a computer or on our phones, our shoulders are hunched over. That pulls a lot of tightness into our pecs, and that needs to be loosened up as well. So doing a lot of upper body stretching is just as equally important. And then of course, you can also help with that by working on your mobility and with foam rolling. Foam rolling and stretching are not the same things. Foam rolling helps to get knots out that are already there. It helps to bring blood flow into the muscles, but then taking your muscle through an actual stretch after you foam roll is going to help keep those knots out. I really like the example that I believe Jill Miller told me when I had her on the podcast. And she said that if you just foam roll, it's kind of the equivalent of pulling a knot tight. Whereas if you foam roll and then stretch, it's like pulling that knot and then making sure it's out for good. Like if you think about a shoelace, right? If you have a knot in a shoelace and you pull it really tight, it just becomes worse. So this is the equivalent of we're trying to get that knot out and then keep it out. So you do need to keep both in there. So focus on, here are the elements of, now that we're in our 40s, this is what you actually need to do. Strength train 2 to 4 times per week. Okay? Doesn't need to be long sessions. We're talking even 5 minutes. New science has shown can make a big impact on your physical health. So 5 minutes minimum on those days where life just gets away from you, but do the best that you can. In Fit Women's Weekly Live, I offer a 30-minute strength session per day and a 60-minute. Then you want to make sure that your cardiovascular health is extremely important as well. Get that running in there 2 to 3 times per week. Nothing crazy. Again, stop putting so much pressure on yourself where you're like, well, they tell me I need to do 40-minute sessions. If you have 40 minutes, great. But if you don't, and you're not doing anything, a 10 to 20-minute cardio session is better than nothing. So do what you are able to do. Third, prioritize your social relationships. I am much better off going for my walk with my girlfriends than I am pushing hard for an hour, getting in an extra workout. It's better for my mind. It's better for my body. And then fourth, work on your flexibility and mobility. Gone are the days that you can just warm up or just say 1, 2, 3, go, work out and be done. Spend 5 to 10 minutes, it doesn't take long, warming up your body, getting your muscles primed for exercise, taking them through a range of motion like arm circles or hip rotations, doing a couple of simple stretches. I love doing like just squatting, like a toddler squat, what's also called an Asian squat. I just don't like that term, but sitting like a toddler for about 30 to 60 seconds, and then do your workout and then spend some time also cooling down, helping those muscles to relax, helping the blood flow, return to normal throughout your body before you just get back to life, and then spending 5 minutes minimum stretching most days of the week, and your body will feel so much better. Because here's the really cool thing. A study found that 8 weeks of training, just 8 weeks, can change your biological age by 3 years. So think about it now. Even if you're not doing a consistent, like perfect routine, if you start now, you can take up to a decade off of your age just by moving your body. And y'all, if that ain't the truth, that is one thing that I will say is I'm sure some of you guys can look at this and go, no, Kindal, you look 41. But when I see some of the people that I grew up with or went to school with posting pictures, and I look at them and then I go, I feel like I look a lot younger. I contribute to a healthy diet. I contributed to healthy movement through all of these years, and not letting my age define what I can and can't do. That's the biggest thing. Do I change the exercises that I do? No, I'm still doing the same work that I was doing. When I am working out and I'm supposed to be doing an intense workout, I'm pushing at the same intensity that I did when I was 30 years old. In fact, people ask me, do I think that I could out fitness a 20-year-old? And I think by general stances, absolutely. I mean, over 40% of the American population is overweight. So if I'm going to go up against the average 20-year-old, then yeah, I'm in pretty good freaking shape. And I find a lot of pride in that, and I hope that you guys do too. So I would love to hear, what are the biggest differences between training in your 30s versus training in your 40s? Did I leave anything off? And what are your favorite exercises now that maybe you hated in your younger years, and vice versa? What are moves that you used to love and now you're just like, that's not really my thing? I'm trying to think of for myself. I still love pull-ups. I still love dumbbell snatches. I actually like burpees. I will say I used to love sprint work, and I just don't anymore. I don't know if that's part of because I'm coming off of an injury from last year. I just find it very hard it takes me a long time to warm up for something like that. So I have backed off a little bit of doing intense sprint work, but who's to say that I don't get back into it eventually? We'll see. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Just a reminder, if all of this resonates with you and you're like, okay, but I need help getting started, go get all the information for the Ignite 30 program. It is down below. Hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on future episodes. And thanks for hanging out with me. Bye.